y'all, welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin, the show where I virtually invite people into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today we're chatting with author and so many other titles I can actually go with you, Meg, of Butterfly Awakens, a memoir of transformation through grief. And we're going to talk about empowerment, grief, spirituality, and using travel as a device to get through the grief of losing your best friend, your mother. So, Meg, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get into all those really deep topics that you write about.
Well, first of all, I love a good movie, and your preview is awesome. So I was like getting into it already. So thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. So who am I? I'd like to say, what am I reading nowadays? And I like that bent because at this point in my life, I'm a huge lover of storytellers and their stories. But as far as my past life is concerned, I was a former federal prosecutor for almost 20 years. And then, at that point, I was like, when my mother passed away, this is not where I want to be. This is not how I want my life to continue to go. There were so many creative avenues calling to me that I thought that if I stayed where I was, I would never have the opportunity to see what I'm made of, who I am, and what my purpose is. So I felt that bray of my heart calling to me to jump out and to start the writing journey as an author. But I have to tell you, I love my backstory because it really touches upon everything that I'm passionate about and that I've got to peruse. And thank God I'm very lucky. My family valued education from the beginning. So wherever it had an education, obviously the work hard ethic that wasn't lost on me. I come from a Italian American family, and my parents are second generation, so their parents were very much imploring upon them that the only way you can raise up in this world is if you educate yourself, whether that's formally or with a curiosity of the world around you. So that was literally inbred in me growing up, that there's no reason why you can't go out into the world and figure out what you love by learning about what's available. And one of the things that I was infatuated with were languages, breaking down those barriers between me and other cultures so I could speak to people, not just in English, but I speak Spanish, I speak Italian, I speak some French still. I'm a little rusty on that. And, I understand the Romance languages, really. So that has become something that I'm really excited and proud about, because when I get to meet new people and if they speak another language, I can jump in and I can, with the hands flailing and everything, I can try to break those barriers. So, but that turned to a desire to really understand cultures, and I got my master's in international security and conflict and inter-American studies. That brought me to Miami. I live in Miami now. And then after I finished that, I wanted to go into the Foreign Service, but I felt, in many respects that, I had a dog, and I'm a dog lover, an animal lover, and my understanding was that he could not come with me wherever I were to go. So I don't leave my animal family behind. My little Alfredo Luigi, a really good Italian name, right? He and I decided to go to law school. So that ended up on that path towards getting my degree from St. Thomas University here in Miami as well. And then after that, I found my way into the Department of Homeland Security. It was INS at the time, Immigration and Naturalization Service. But it's interesting because I always tapped into that actor side of myself. Being a litigator really is that role. And at the end of my 20 years, I looked back and said, I played the greatest role of my life for 20 years, So, studying human nature, humankind, why people do things that they do. There's a lot of criminal elements involved with some of the cases, and a lot of people coming to this country seeking a better life. And it was just so interesting to see why people do the things they do. So subsequent to leaving, I got the beginning of a master's in positive psychology. I went through the Happiness Studies Academy, and, it was really a study on human beings and what they really want out of life, and how do we get to that ultimate state of bliss or happiness. So it's been quite a journey, and I love the sign behind you, let all that you do be done in love. And I feel like when I start from that place, the love, the passion, the alignment with purpose, then I can never go wrong.
That is so true. And I want to touch on something that I think both you and I have in common. I didn't really go full time into blogging. Blogging ended up leading into chats in the blog cabin and so forth and so
Love
on
it.
until my dad died. So I think that turning point, when you lose a parent, that
Yeah.
whole turning point, it just makes you reevaluate your life.
Yeah, no, I first of all, I love the fact that it's chats from the blog cabin because it feels very conversational, as if we have a fire in front of us, kicking back and
Mhm.
rocking on our chairs together, just talking about life and engaging in that, from a place of what commonalities. Of course, you're telling me your father passed away. Yes, my mother passed away, and when she did, it was really a reoevaluation of what I wanted to do in this world and how I wanted to show up and who I was becoming and whether or not it
Mhm.
aligned to my passion and purpose. And the loss was intense for me, and I imagine since you're still talking about it and that at least shifted your life to transform into
Mhm.
doing something like this, it really was something that dictated where my next path would go, because I lost my mentor, my guide, my
Mhm.
champion, and I had to find my way alone. And I love how I can at this point in my life look back and say you're never alone. Like, there's always, either earth
Mhm.
angels or angels from beyond watching over you. So I really find great comfort in that. Thank you, God. That
Yeah.
I'm never walking this path alone, and I always look toward it's Mary Oliver quote I love. It's living a conscious life. It's pay attention, be astonished, and tell all about it, which is really something that you do on your blog cabin. Pay attention to who shows up as your guest, be
Mhm.
astonished, look for the commonalities, those synchronicities, and then tell all about it. Join with other people, the audience, and try to inspire them to start telling their stories as well, which is really exciting to come alive to the beauty of all of our dreams. So that
Mhm.
gets me going.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can tell that your mom was, you said, was your best friend. So how long ago did you lose your mom?
So she passed away in 2011. It's going to be 11 years in 2022, and it's really quite unbelievable that she's been gone so long. You know, when I say she was my best friend, I am grateful, because growing up it was not that way.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if anyone can really say that their parents are their best friend growing up, because you're like really rebelling against anything that they say, and you're trying to do your thing and showing up as you, and they're trying to control, hoping, dear God, keep their this angel on their shoulder watching over them so they don't do like hurt themselves, or God forbid anything worse. I can say this, the gift my mother gave me as an adult was, first, the ability to carve my own path, and then the second was to show up in a different space where, I guess she'll never, as a parent, and I have two kids, you'll never like shed the whole, don't disappoint me,
Mhm.
don't do those things that I know, are bad and not so great and all, but she allowed me to make my own mistakes. And with that, she also shared with me her mistakes, and, the great apology. Like she said to me, if there's any way that I failed you growing up, I apologize, which, there's something beautiful in seeing the humanity of your parents. I certainly, hold my parents on a pedestal, but when they become human and we see that they are with the same fears and the same concerns and the same, it changes the way you see them, and the gratitude really comes through, for whatever it is that they gave you to begin your journey. And since it's in November, it's the month of gratitude for me. I certainly will shout out to all those mentors and those guides, in addition to my mom, who showed up on my path and really gave me that mentoring and support, because we are where we are, not ever
Mhm.
alone. We definitely have a lot of people pouring in their wisdom to us. And I'm grateful for the people who took me aside and became certainly mentors toward me. That's awesome. I can't tell them enough how grateful I am.
So how did your relationship with your mom help you to become a better parent? Because you just mentioned you have two kids.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting, because I swore growing up that I would never do the things that my parents would do. And then I
Yep,
find myself
we all
as
do.
an adult doing exactly what my parents did. So it's like, oh my God, the haunting, right? It's coming full
Mhm.
circle. And the real reality is that we all do our best, right? I really have a lot more compassion for them. And, nobody gives you a book when you have a kid. They just hand you the baby and say, good luck to you. And, hopefully you're excited about starting on that process. It was your choice to have a child, to bring them into this world, and that you would want to give them a whole bunch of love. But man, baby boot camp is tough. The middle school years are tough. I mean, certainly I was bullied as a middle schooler, so I'm sure that broke my mother's heart. And for my kids, the same thing happened, in many ways. But for the difference is that I was able to become a lawyer, and there's no way nobody is going to push my kids around without me actually using my voice and speaking up. But I learned from my own experience so that I can move forward. So back to your point with regard to what do you learn from your parents, there are so many things that I absolutely love that are legacy from the way I was raised. Certainly, we love to go to the movies. I found a partner, my husband, loved to go to the movies. We love stories. We love to read. We love the arts. We love the music. So exposing my kids to as many things as I can financially or time-wise do was really important for me. And because I valued what we experienced with my family, my mom and my dad, faith was very important to my family as well. My mother, up until the very end, really relied on her faith to pull her through her cancer diagnosis and to walk that very scary journey of uncertainty as to what was going to happen. And, that great unknown, when it comes to the end of your time here. And, I saw her humanity, but as well, I saw how she clutched on to a strong faith. And for me, when you had those moments of that dark night of the soul, and those examples before you that unfold, eventually you'll get back to your foundationals. But the reality is you've got to find your own way. And I think my mother really, really encouraged her girls, because I'm one of 3 daughters, to be really independent, to really, really value that internal those internal gifts that you have, and to show up in the world without apologizing to anyone, using your voice, because she was my mother, a force of nature. So I emulate that moving forward.
I love that. We have to take a brief commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about, when your mom got the cancer diagnosis and how you just mentioned something about her humanity. Talk about how it totally changed the way you actually kind of, she came off the pedestal a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, brief commercial break.
Homeschooling just got easier and deliciously fun. My new book, Dishing Up Devotions, 36 Faith-Building Activities for Homeschooling Families, is a delightful devotional the whole family will love. With encouragement for mom, fun family activities, conversation starters, and simple baking recipes. It's sure to feed your family's faith while building lasting memories in just minutes a week.
And we are back talking with Meg. Meg, before we went to the commercial, you talked about, seeing your mom get the cancer diagnosis, seeing her humanity, because honestly, when you see someone that's larger than life, my dad was a larger than life character, and then you see something like cancer, and that's another similarity is he had cancer as well. Just strike them down. Somebody that was so vibrant and full of life, and now all of a sudden they're even struggling to even get up and walk. So let's talk about humanity, and how, as children of parents that are going through this, how we can cope, how we can survive.
So I am very grateful that my family, my sisters and her siblings, her brother and my father, everybody showed up for her. And especially toward the end, everybody took when it was really bad, and you know what I'm speaking to, the end stage of cancer is really something to behold. If you've got, I will say this, if you haven't gone through that, you're very lucky. I think going through that and watching someone you love suffer the end stage of cancer is really, really heartbreaking. And one of the things that really kept me going was I asked my mom, you know, do you want to fight? Do you want to fight? Do you want? So she was, I don't want to give in to this. I want to fight. And one of the beautiful things is I was pregnant with my daughter when she found out she had cancer, and I found out over the phone, and it really knocked me to my knees. It was like that C word that you never want to hear from someone that you love. And the reality is, as I said, well, I go straight to my superpower. Like, okay, we got this. You know, after I picked myself up from, you know, that devastating news and the anger I had toward God, because I did have anger toward God. Like, why her? You know, why her? She was so generous, and she was so loving, and she was such a good person. She was only 67 when she passed away, and that had been, like, I will say, 2 years earlier, so 65 when she got the diagnosis, which is relatively young these days. And once I picked myself off the ground, I was like, okay, we're going, you know, we're gonna be by your side. We're going to show up for you like you have showed up for us so many years. And we're going to keep your mind. That's all I did. I'm not a doctor. I never even proposed to be one. But one of the things that I'm fascinated with is the mind, body, spirit impact. So I had a lot of tools in my, you know, my tool shed that I could bring to the fore to try to keep her spirits high. And, you know, even going through something, and ultimately that did in fact was ended in the end of her life, you know, those moments still that we live are so precious, and that you make the most of them and you enjoy each other and don't live as if she's already dead. You know, that was really important for me, to actually never inseminate her mind with, this is the end. Okay, we never know when is the end. Nobody knows when is the end. You could get a cancer diagnosis and you could beat it and you have years left to live. You know, it's really the human spirit that is huge. So back to going through it, and anyone who's listening who's experiencing this right now, it's really exhausting for the caregivers. But, you know, I think in many respects, you kind of rely on that love, and it kind of love fuels you. And then the people who show up who loved that person as well, you know, it kind of fuels you. But what I really want to share is that you're not going through that alone, as long as you ask for help. And I think many ways, a lot of my friends showed up for me going through it, and they knew that even after she passed, that's when the real challenge was going to begin. And, you know, you start processing what just happened to you, because going through it, the adrenaline is there. You're ready to show up, and you're going to be by their side. You're going to show up for them, and you put all your other stuff away. And I was traveling back and forth from Miami to Orlando a lot, and a lot of sacrifices. My daughter was only 2 at the time, and, you know, my son was 8, so they were little, they weren't old, and my husband had to stand up and do more on this end, so I could be there for my mother, and my sisters could be there as well. My one sister lived in Orlando, my other sister was in Coral Springs. She is a doctor, so she was doing what she could, you know, as well. But as a lawyer, I mean, what am I going to do as far as medicine? I was like, I can't help her in any way other than be there as she was a rock for me. So, you know, one of the things that was really challenging was because I relied on her so much that when she was gone, and I initially felt like the physical presence, that's it. That was kind of like that sustenance that sustained me, you know, that life spirit was gone, or so I thought it was. And I felt like, why am I here anymore? How could I stay here in this world and experience joy, laughter, love, still knowing that, you know, that experience with her, which I really, really enjoyed more than anything, would be gone. I called her every morning. I mean, I called her every morning without fail. Okay, have a great day. There is something really fascinating and beautiful about starting your day with that positive, uplifting call, or someone saying, you know, wonderful things to you and sending you out into the world. It changes your whole dynamic or demeanor. And, you know, one of the things I would say to somebody who's, you know, you really still have to, you know, you still have to focus on your self-care, you know, so that you don't get so depleted that in the end you're so exhausted that you're like, where do I begin? And you don't even have the energy to figure that out. So that is definitely something I would suggests clearly my life is my life, and you walk your own path. And if it doesn't resonate with you, then move on, find something else. But, I really was in a dark night of the soul. I really did not want to continue. And honestly, my body, my nervous system was shot. I was having anxiety attacks, and I really needed help other than what I could give myself. So, I do encourage people to reach out if you're in a spot where you're feeling depressed and lonely, or, even after COVID this last couple of years, it's a whole new experience that nobody really has ever experienced before. And the fact of the matter is that we don't have to go through this alone. You have shows like your show, reaching out to Melissa, shows and people all around who've experienced it, who are willing and ready to hold your hand and bring you along and not leave you behind, which, is something that I did experience, albeit I'm stubborn too. I wanted to just sit in my closet and cry for days on end, but I had a job. I had to go to my job still, and I had my kids, and there was a point in time where I had to take a 6-week leave of absence because it was too much. It was overwhelming. And I think that you can't run from grief. It'll catch up to you. You're smiling. It will catch up to you. So with that in mind, that self-care component really does come flailing through, because unless you put the oxygen on you, you can't help anybody else. And there's a lot of responsibilities we have as adults. And that's one thing I certainly, see now, having a family and having my own life, that I didn't have any compassion for as, a child in my house, or even a young adult, because I could just, my path was my own. I had nobody else to speak for, and I could do what I wanted. So, I have a lot of gratitude, once again, for my parents and for the gifts they've given me over time, so that I can do the best job I can do for my own family and for my friends and for the people I love.
So let's talk about how you channeled all that grief into your book, Butterfly Awakens, because in this book, you set out searching for a lighthouse that you saw in a vision when your mom died. So let's talk about how you were able to just write it.
Well, I'll tell you this. When I shared that chapter, it was the hardest chapter I had to write. When I was by her bedside, and I was thinking, okay, I'm an attorney, and I'm going to share that I had a vision when my mother passed away to the world, and people are going to think I'm crazy. But at that point, when I was at the page, let's say, when you're sitting with the page, and you're like, well, this could happen to so many people, or it might not. But my experience, I wanted to share it to the point where someone sitting where I was, would have the understanding that they are not, this is not a unique experience to yourself. This could be happening to anybody. And I wanted to share my experience, so anyone who is going through the dark night as well, I could help them and give them hope that they could walk through. So, at my mother's bedside, it was, I never had an experience like this before, where I was praying by her side. I really truly believed that she was going to rally and come back to us. And she was in a medically induced coma. And I was praying, and I had this vision with my eyes closed, obviously, of this beautiful lighthouse. And it was the strangest looking lighthouse. And then all around it was the bluest sky, like what the color is on your screen right now with my name on it. It was this beautiful blue sky. And all of a sudden, I felt a flash of white light. It would have blinded me. It felt like that. And I heard her say to me, "Let me go." And I was just like, I just stopped. And I was like, oh my God, she's going. This is happening. And it was really surreal, and at the same time shocking, because I really believed she was going to have a miracle of her own and come back to us. So I opened my eyes, and I said, I think she's going. I think she's leaving us. And she passed away. And of course, the drama girl in me goes, I was like, we're sitting around her, we're saying all the beautiful things that we remember about her. My father, I just couldn't look at him. I felt like, oh my God, this man, his best friend, that was his best friend. That is his partner. She's my mother, and I love her, but that is the woman he chose over 45 years before to walk a path in life. And he had to face life without her. And then my sister was there, and I just felt like I looked at her and I saw myself, and it was heartbreaking. It went back to that point, that word, heartbreaking. So that was the impetus behind the lighthouse. So of course the lighthouse stayed with me, and I looked up the symbolism. I was like, what does this mean? Why did I see a lighthouse? It can't be for naught. There has to be some meaning to it. That's good. Maybe she was talking to me where she couldn't in words and images. So I went back and I looked up the imagery of the lighthouse, and I wanted to find the lighthouse. I wanted to find where I wanted to understand that. And interestingly, I happened upon the books of Paulo Coelho, who wrote the book The Pilgrimage, which is all about El Camino. And at the end of El Camino is Finisterre, and I found the lighthouse in Finisterre. Wow. So talk about signs and symbols, and sharing that with the world, and whether people believe that or not, or they think I'm making silly things up in my imagination. You know what? Illusion, albeit, is persistent. That was the one that I chose. That reality is what I chose. So I decided I somehow was going to go on El Camino. I just didn't know how to do it. And 7 years later, it took 7 years, I found myself walking with 17, all of us together in total, from Sarria in Spain to Santiago. And then the last day we went to the lighthouse in Finisterre. And I don't want to give it away because there was a message there waiting for me. And it was a powerful message for me. And I think it'll speak to everyone, because I think this is, other than love in life, and we've had that, this is what we all are seeking in the madness, in the chaos. And I had an email today. Someone says, we all want to share the message of the mess. And I think Robin Roberts said that. And that is why I wrote Butterfly Awakens, because I promised God, because that is my higher power, I promised that if I walked through this and got out at the end to see that light at the end of the tunnel, the lighthouse, that I would share my story to give hope, or that other people, if they keep walking, keep moving forward, that there will be a transformation. You will come out the other end, a beautiful butterfly, to fly differently, have a different perspective, and experience life in a different way. And that is my intention. It was written to who I was when I was sitting in my closet crying after I lost my mother. And my hope is that it's now out in the world and people receive it with that intention in mind. And I'm a big manifester. I don't believe in anyone saying or naysaying your dreams. So I think if God places a dream in your heart, then he won't leave it there, or she won't leave it there. You'll move forward in such a way that every step will take you closer to realizing it. So yeah, that is why I wrote Butterfly Awakens, and the whole analogy of the metamorphosis of the butterfly. I brought that through in my book, from the cocoon to the transformation, growth, that mess that we're talking about, and that part, and then ultimately coming out at the other end, more of you becoming yourself, the butterfly. So
wow, I mean, just talking about some of the things that you said, it kind of gave me chills, because it's similar. Like, for instance, like when we knew my dad was passing, he was in hospice, and we knew when he was passing, we knew when he was leaving, because we honestly, my sister had passed away 20 some odd years before that, from cancer as well. So there's two instances of cancer in our family. But I just saw him. Right before he passed, he reached up, and we always said it was my sister. Like, they used to love to go get ice cream together. And it was like, she was maybe because his hand was like this, but she was getting him an ice cream cone. And he just reached up to grab it, and then he was gone. He took his last breath, and it was just like, oh my goodness, and but it's hard when you're trying to help your surviving parent get through the loss of the love of their life, because my parents were married over 50 years. And so they had known each other since my mom was 11 and my dad was 13.
Wow.
So they grew up together as well. So trying that first year, it was more focusing on trying to get my mom through her grief and getting through the holidays, because he died right before his birthday, right before the next anniversary, right before her birthday, right before Valentine's Day, all that mess. And you got Thanksgiving and Christmas as well adding into it, and all the major milestones of, not seeing two of the grandchildren graduate. I think they graduated that year from college. Another one was graduating. I mean, all the milestones that he wasn't there for. And he was larger than life, like I said. So it's kind of like trying to get your surviving parent through all that year, and you kind of stuff your grief down a little bit. So you've got to be strong for the other parent. Yeah. And then after that first year rolls around and you survive that first year, it's almost like grief hits you like a Mack truck. And it's like
a Mack truck.
And we unfortunately had a very unique circumstance, because the cemetery where my dad was buried at, they hadn't opened up the new part yet. So he wasn't able to be buried yet in the new part. So they had to store him in a mausoleum. And then we had to go through the funeral service yet again. So we had to go through it twice.
Oh, wow. Wow. We have a ritual that my family does when we come together in Orlando, when my whole family, I have two sisters and they have kids and their families. And we go to her gravesite and we tell her what's happening. We just sit there and all of us tell her what's going on. Like what it's more symbolic that we get to be together and we share that experience with her, her obviously the symbolism of her being there with us. And it feels like, it feels like a bit of a homecoming when we do that. It's kind of like a anchoring of my family. And I feel for you that, moving the body and moving it's tough. It's, I want everyone to know that process, you got to be so gentle with yourself. You have to, acknowledge if you're feeling disgruntled or angry, it might be because, your emotions are overwhelming you and you're not really giving them an opportunity to be expressed. And you're just feeling like you need to be still and you don't have the option to be still. So, all of it just comes to a head and you start screaming at people, which, happened in my mother's, where when she passed away, it was screaming at everybody. It was screaming at the world, screaming at, what I wanted to have happen that didn't happen. I was angry and all the process of grief, that's a Kubler-Ross says, the 5 stages of grief, and you go through at so many random opportunities or stages. But what you were, to your point, that first year, like when the holidays hit, the birthdays hit, just, stab me in the heart and twist the knife, right? It's like, she should be here or he should be here to experience that. So one of the greatest shifts for me, and it doesn't make up for the fact that there are times when I wish she was physically here so I could call her and tell her, you'll never believe I published a book, or you'll never believe, this wonderful thing happened. My daughter's an actor and she loves to sing, and my mother would have loved to watch her. And my son went to college this last year and he's in Italy right now. So she would love that. All of the kids getting into these universities and experiencing, she would have loved that. But what shifted for me was when I started writing, because my first book is called The Magical Guide to Bliss. And one of my dear friends who saw that I was struggling, she gave me her time. She happened to be a therapist too. She gave me the time where I could just sit with her and just talk to her about my anger, about my desperation, about my depression. And she said at the end, the beautiful thing, and I think this goes back to the quote where Wayne Dyer says, you go from the now here to the nowhere. But the beautiful thing about the nowhere is that she's everywhere. So if I could have a sacred space where I could honor the everywhere and channel what guidance and wisdom she had maybe already given me, or that is present to me today, then maybe that will help me walk myself out of this grieving process. So I started writing, and I did these insights of the day where I ended up with a magical guide to bliss. There are 366 insights of the day that took me on a journey from what am I doing to, oh my God, my dreams are coming alive. I see focus. I see intention. Like I said, November is the month of gratitude. In my book, November is the month of gratitude. So it guides me to make those choices in my life that empower me rather than deplete me. I wrote myself a guide and then published it and shared it with whoever needs it as well. And then basically the story about Butterfly Awakens is how I followed my own guide to show up in a different space, honoring those gifts, like I said at the outset, and those talents that we have, and honoring the life of the people who impact us, like my mother, and how you're doing with your father and these beautiful chats. So you take them with you, and how you choose to live your life from this point on can be, you know, one of these greatest, you know, gifts back to the people who raised you. And then whatever you pay forward to the people who you contact with or you know, you cross paths with. Because I think we keep it all to ourselves, not so good. You know, share your talents, give your gifts to the world, be a part of the service, be a part of the process. There's so much beautiful things that this ripple effect can have beyond your wildest imagination if you start to be a little bit more vulnerable and reach out to others in such a way that you can be the love you want to see in this world.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you mentioned something earlier, which kind of goes on with what you just said about you're a big manifester, and you've actually got a YouTube channel
Yes.
called Manifesting with Meg. So let's talk about how that actually showed up. Was that before you wrote Butterfly Awakens or before the other book?
So Manifesting with Meg, you know, I loved asking questions as a lawyer. You know, I was a litigator and I felt like I still wanted to do that. I was good at it. I got people to tell me things that they probably didn't want to tell me, you know, on the stand. And I wanted to use that gift of, you know, being in conversation with people for the good, to actually share with the world these extraordinary people that would be seemingly ordinary in their own minds at that, but they're not. They're incredibly extraordinary. Share their stories with other people so that other people can perhaps get inspired and maybe adopt some of the tools that they use. And one of the things that I manifested in my life, and it was a wonderful experience, was I was on stage with Oprah Winfrey in 2014 in front of 15,000 people in Miami, which was everyone was thinking of me either. It's like, is that Meg? Is that Meg? I like, as probably the entire, you know, country and world, you know, Oprah. And the reality is that she's a very intentional person, you know, manifesting the destiny of your dreams, really using her show for all those years the same way to engage people in their pain and tell stories of how they overcame it or how they are living the life of their dreams. And, you know, for me, you know, I was really excited to be on that stage with her. And you'll have to read the book to get more details as to how it magically happened, because it was quite surreal as well. But when she told me that it's time to live the life of my dreams, that's when I really started to believe I could publish a book, which was my magical guide. A year later, I published that. A year later, I started a Shine networking group. It's Shine Spirit Hope Inside, a networking event here in Miami, where I brought people together to network and collaborate and to share their innovation and their creative ideas. We started a scholarship for young, innovative creatives in the area to support them. I was like, I wanted to keep that momentum that I felt, because let me tell you, anyone who is in someone's presence where they own the beauty and the energy of possibility, and you feel there's just, I don't know, when you like push your hands together, you know, there's like this energy field that comes off your body. I'm telling you, I don't know, when I left that stage with her, people were like, oh my God, you were in her presence. They wanted pictures with me. And I was like, okay, that's not necessary. But the reality was, you know, I was up there on the stage. I was waving to people. I was just having the greatest time of my life. And I wanted to be that. I wanted to take the baton and use it in a way where in my little corner of the world, I could impact and introduce my magical people to others. And you know, that's how I started Manifesting with Meg. It was one show. The woman who was a dear friend of mine who was on stage with Oprah, she was my first guest. So we got to get together and we were talking, and then I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of, you know, fell on myself as I learned the whole world of Zoom and Facebook Lives and chatting and blogging and all of that. You know, what they say, the experience of a lifetime is taking the first step, right? You got to walk in the
Mhm.
direction of your dreams, and those first actions that really kind of shake you out of those fears that hold you back to move into the possibility that'll open up your world beyond your imagination. So, I've had so many incredible experiences. I love the band Coldplay, and I was, by virtue of my connection with Love Button Global Movement, which is a fantastic organization. And see, you're into love, definitely spreading love like a daffodil, like a dandelion out into the world, one person at a time. And they're doing amazing things. And I connected with them, and they invited me out to Chris Martin's house to hear a private concert. Yes. So
Wow.
I'm sitting, the week before I decided I was going to quit my job, I was sitting in the, makeshift, kind of a Mediterranean feel gala at Chris Martin's house in his tennis court, hearing him sing Yellow, which was a song that I played over and over again in my closet as I was mourning my mother. So, like I said, I pay attention to synchronicities, and you never know what's going to happen. So I'm sitting there. My husband was with me, a dear judge friend who's a dear friend of mine. She actually walked El Camino, was there too. And I looked at him, I go, I need to step out into this calling that I'm getting. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm very grateful, albeit it was terrifying, exciting at the same time. But, he supported me and my family as well. So, we had our hits and misses, like those obstacles that come along the way. But the story's too good to keep to myself, And I have people who tell me all the time, and they just mouth agape, right? Like, what did you do now? And Love Button sponsored my walk in El Camino. So while I was doing this torturous walk, I mean, to all you hikers out there, God bless you, because you are walking 77 miles in the matter of 6 days on this Camino, and I wasn't prepared for it. I'll be honest. I literally pulled my back out 3 months beforehand, so I couldn't even get off the floor. So I was happy to be even sitting or get walking, but I did it anyway because I planned it, and people showed up, and I wasn't going to let people down, and I wasn't going to let myself down. And these people with the love buttons passed out, got me to the lighthouse where I got my message. So, and they always say buen camino, it means have a good walk, or good way. We say the way. The way is the peace, the light, the dream, right? It doesn't really stop there. It begins after you come home. All of that you've gained, all of the wisdom you've earned, because it's hard to earn, all of the mourning you've been through, all the honoring of the lives that touch your life, all the gratitude that comes through you, all of that, when you come home again to yourself, that's when the journey starts up again, the next chapter. And I always love, I think it was Ethan Hawke who said, the best movies are those that the conversation begins when the lights turn on at the end. Wow. So if you can challenge someone to think past their comfort zone, outside of the perspective or the, understandings that they've been raised with or understood over time, if you can start opening and crack the window just a little bit to have different kinds of conversations, my God, how magical is that?
That is totally magical. And I think that's one of the reasons why I started Chats in the Blog Cabin, is to learn, not only because it's happened out of COVID, and so I missed that human connection, and I missed being able to talk to people. And plus, too, it was during the time that a lot of controversy, the racial controversies were going on, and they're still going on in our country, but it was huge then. And I wanted to have conversations with people so that I could hear their stories, and that everybody can learn from each other, because so many times we're so busy trying to get our point across that we're not sitting down and listening to what people are actually saying. And if one thing they say gets your back up, you turn off and you don't listen. And I've learned that you've got to be an active listener. You've got to sit there and you've got to listen to their point. Even if you don't agree with their point, that doesn't mean that you have to totally go, okay, that's my way of thinking now. You don't have to do that. You just have to sit there and listen and give them a voice, because when you start shutting people's voices down is when all this controversy comes up.
Love it. I'm telling you, Melissa, right there, what happened to us when we stand in our corners and turn our backs, not engaging in conversation. We miss out on so much. And the bottom line is it becomes an us versus them when it never had to be that. And hate and anger takes over the possibility of where love can grow. Now, I'll tell you, to your point, I think this is fantastic. You open this space up where people from all different backgrounds and experiences come together. And one of the greatest gifts I've learned from being a lawyer is that you listen first. You listen first. You give the other person the opportunity to be heard. It becomes a sacred space. And both parties will protect that sacred space, because I know many people who do not agree with me, but I've always given them the opportunity to share, and I've done my best to seek to understand, then be understood. And I can't really, if someone just says at that point where, they don't give me that space back, I'll detach with love, because, maybe they're not ready for the conversation. I'm not. And honestly, I've been changed. I changed the way I see things, trying to be compassionate from where someone's standing to as their experience and what they've gone through. If I don't ask the questions, I will never know. And I can't really engage from a world where, Miami is a very different place for people who live in the heartland. And New York is a different place, and Tennessee is a different place, but all the people that I've met from all different areas in this country and even internationally, I'm made better by knowing them, as long as they come to the conversation from a place of love. So, that's my intention, really, to offer that space to others when I have them on my show. We don't necessarily agree 100%, but that's the beauty of this country, where this melting pot becomes the American dream, and how we all can support or collaborate with each other to actually find what that is and start asking questions so that we can move forward as a part of a solution rather than be a part of the problem. So well done, Melissa.
And I love how you said melting pot, because if you looked at the intro, there's that one picture of my family. We're a melting pot.
I love it.
Native of Mexico, and we have these 3 Mexican-American girls, 3 daughters, strong, beautiful girls. And also my son-in-law is Asian. So we have a melting pot in our family. So coming and seeing, I think that's allowed me to see things from a minority point of view, not to say that I ever have been put in that spot. Yeah. But seeing what my daughters have experienced, like they're not white enough for their white friends, and they're not Hispanic enough or Mexican enough for their Mexican friends, and going through and seeing when COVID hit, all the hate that was toward my son-in-law and all my Asian friends. I mean, it was just like beyond me. I'm like, how can people be so? Why can they not listen and learn and research the facts instead of just they see something they called it China flu, and all of a sudden all Asians are bad.
Yeah, I do think fear is a component in that, when people are terrified and uncertain, and they really do believe that blame is going to help, blame somebody. You got to blame somebody, The reality becomes what we're facing, or what we have faced this last 2 years. That doesn't help the solution toward the end of this pandemic. That wasn't something because of the color of their skin and because of how they show up in this world. I mean, I will say this, I don't ever think that I was ever taught exclusion in my family. I was like inclusion. And I don't know, I get excited by diversity. I think it makes me a better person. In many respects, even being a prosecutor for DHS, an immigration attorney, that wasn't really who I was, because when I showed up, it was case by case. I let people be heard. And honestly, I did my job, but at the same time, there's a lot of discretion. And I was like, I really, really, it's called respect for the integrity of the human person. And until I see otherwise, and even when people are angry, like I can see why people get pissed off, that they get, cornered into a place where they're a non-person. They're no longer special. They're, feeling that they're going to be a nothing because everyone else is moving on to maybe we're all more diversity. Contemplate. Look, my son applied to college this last year, and I'm Italian, but in Miami, if you're not Hispanic, it's you're not a minority, and you're competing with others. And, that was really challenging. It wasn't based upon, only his grades, but all these other stuff. So, that comes up, but I can understand in many respects that there needs to be more, more what we as a country look like wherever we go. So, I understand that. I can tell you this. I really, truly wish that we all try to put past our stereotypes or what we think divides us to find out what it is that really unites us. And there's going to be commonalities. I know, Melissa, you and I come from different backgrounds. Certainly I don't have, the Mexican culture in my family. I mean, my husband's Italian even, but I'll tell you this, you're amazing. And what you come to the world with gifts to share is amazing. And how stupid would I be if I precluded my life from knowing that? So, I think, that's something to think about as we move forward. Don't let those who want control truly, keep us from truly knowing each other based upon who we are. So, the content of the character, I'll quote MLK there, Jr., judge me by the content of my character, not the color of my skin or where I'm from. So, with that, I will say, there's a lot of need for these kind of conversations in the world today. I think that if we all show up being an advocate for what we want to see in this world, be it, the American dream and what that means to all of us and how we want that to unfold. And we're all here together. We got to get along with each other for the most part. I think we all benefit, take care of each other, take care of our world, in light of everything. And it will make us better people in the end.
Yes, that is so true. And unfortunately, our time is up. I cannot believe this has been such a great conversation. But Meg, you are welcome to come back anytime.
Oh, thank you.
And I would love for you to come back and talk about your experience as an immigration lawyer, because a lot of people think immigration, it's so easy. People shouldn't come here illegally because it's so easy to get into this country, where it's not always so easy.
Yeah. Well, you certainly, that would be a pleasure as well. I had 20 years under my belt. I saw a lot of different experiences in court. I laugh because I will say this: over time, as you grow and become mature as an adult, you understand that nothing is ever as it seems. And you need to start asking the questions. So that is what I'm here to do now and how I show up now. And I do support a lot of the immigration attorneys with a wellness now, because that really is important. Burnout is real. The burnout for all of us is real. Like you were saying, the isolation. Oh my God, I'm an extrovert. I'm terrified sometimes to be in public because of the isolation for so long. So I have to overcome that as well. And I think we can help each other come back into the world, making it what we want to see as far as a better place, and where we literally help each other at the end.
Yes. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your wonderful story with us.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Tell people where they can find you at.
So my books are available wherever books are sold. I have a webpage as well that Melissa put up there. It's www.megnocero.com. I can be found on all sorts of social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, also Instagram. I love pictures. Wherever the creative arts are, I get excited about that, because, I put out to the universe that one day I'll have a Broadway show, and maybe we'll all be singing about, a time in our lives where there was so much angst, but at the time we overcame that and there's light again. So, those are all the places. Twitter, I'm there as well. So if you want to, reach out to me, message me. And, if you're going through something as well, grief, I hopefully come to the table with the intention to be of service from that space, because I am incredibly grateful that I came out of a really dark place into the light again. And if I can be a light shining bright in any way, that's the gift, right? That's the gift of the suffering and the pain. So while pain is the price we pay to be human, the best thing we can do is, turn it back around with the gifts that we learn and help someone else along.
That is so true. And once again, Meg, I want to thank you for coming on. And guys, I will put in the show notes her book links, all the links where you can find her, as well as some of the organizations that she talked about. because I think it's important that we get involved and we start listening to each other. So, on that note, be blessed, and most importantly, keep chatting.